a couple of billion people on the planet, and this mic is connected to all of them. What would you say?
Be gentle on yourself, find your passions. Life does not need to be the way that you were taught it to be. We, in our society, we have a framework that's very specific of how we're supposed to live, and that way does not necessarily serve us. And there are other ways to live. You just need to look for them. And a lot of it is in your internal wisdom already. You just need to create the space for it to come out.
Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, I always like to honor our guests because they're coming with a couple of things I deem very expensive, their time. Time is offered 24 hours to every one of us. What we do with that 24 hours will really tell me a lot about you if you learn to honor time, respect time. And I invite people to learn the value of time, how expensive it is. The other is the journey is a powerful creator. It has created the individual that is before us. And we want to stop and honor Gabe for coming and sharing both of this precious commodity. Gabe, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It's an honor, man. As I mentioned to you, actually all the people that come on the podcast, I always ask them this question. I mentioned to you in the onset that there are two journeys that we go on. The first is the individual journey that we learn about ourselves. And then there's the interdependent journey, if you will, that part that we are a servant. My question to you is, Gabe, how do you serve mankind?
Wow. More and more of my life has been devoted to service, actually. I'm on a six week trip going to multiple retreats. I just left a retreat where I was in service and I actually had this moment. I should say that these retreats are plant medicine based. I
Yeah.
just left a retreat and I was in the middle of a ceremony and I was just in such deep awe and reverence. It was so beautiful. The most intense beauty I've ever experienced in my life, and thinking, this is my life. I get to experience this beauty. And I'm not even here for myself right now. I'm here in service. And
Yeah.
how amazing can that be, that I can be here and help people through their processes and hold people. And even in ayahuasca ceremonies, you're doing something so simple as changing out someone's bucket where they
Yeah.
purged into, or sitting next to someone and just being in silent support. Yeah, that is what lights me up the most in my life right now.
And being of service is one of the ultimates because we have an opportunity to walk with another as they're walking into the awareness of the greatness of who they are. And it's a powerful walk, if you will. And to be there and witness that process, there's nothing like it. There's absolutely nothing like it. And so I always tell people, hurry up and get there, but there's a cost. As you and I know, Gabe, there's a cost to becoming a servant. One must be stripped naked. One must be broken. One must be put together. One must be humble. One must become all of those wonderful things, vulnerable, all of those beautiful things, and put together with love, patience, empathy, and then we are able to serve others. One of our customs here that we do is go back. I call it our beginnings gate. And that is where we start our life, if you will. And this space is called the family. This is the first location that you and I will hang out for a few years until we begin that process of moving on, becoming an adult, as we say, and creating our space on this planet. My question is, what was your family unit like?
My family unit, I think, was in denial. We, like a lot of American families, were not very good at expressing our emotions, at feeling our emotions, but we didn't really talk about it. If there was conflict in the family, we would kind of wait until everyone cooled off, and
Mhm.
then we'd pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And there was a big safety issue there, that there was a lot of rage in my household, and going back and then expressing like, hey, I feel really hurt when you are in rage. I feel like that's not a safe place. That was not something safe to do, or something that we really knew how to do, how to express our emotions, express conflict, create boundaries in a healthy way. And I also I also remember just a distinct lack of intimacy in my house. Like,
Mhm.
I can't remember like a lot of hugging even, or kissing between my parents. And recently I was able to witness a couple with their 1 year old child. I saw them celebrating together. They were holding the baby, and they were in deep love and celebration. And I kind of just opened my arms, and I was like, let me just receive some of that. Let me just like
Yeah.
bring some of that in for my inner child who never had that, who never saw a healthy expression of love between his parents, or never got to be a part of this healthy expression of love.
Yeah, it's amazing. That place, I tell people, this is the place where we first experience trauma, the family. That unit, again, because we have a couple of people that are called parents, and some people are lucky to have quote unquote parents that are awakened to the journey, and they're in their process, and um, are able to educate their kids. But that's few. Even those type parents have traumas that they implant into their children. But most families, that's where we are traumatized. And based on that trauma, your specific, how was your relationship to others based on the trauma that you experienced as an individual in your family with your parents and so forth? How did you relate to others outside of your family?
I mean, I definitely grew up with the belief that I'm different, that it's hard to make friends, that there's scarcity in friendships. And we definitely as a family liked teasing each other, and there was
Yeah.
sarcasm and teasing. And sometimes that lands, sometimes that doesn't land. That if people, I still do it at times. If people know that I'm being playful and I'm having fun, and they are in a good place, and they fully understand what I'm putting out, then they might laugh when I make a joke of that nature. But more and more I've realized that when you poke at someone, when you tease someone, that it might poke at a wound. It might poke at their trauma. And instead of thinking it's funny, you put them into their own process, and then they are mad, upset, hurt, regressing even. And for me, I was just trying to have fun. I didn't know that there's something I'm doing that's going to hurt someone. So over time, more and more, I've learned to, know my audience, and to find a different way to connect, to be playful as opposed to teasing. And yeah, it's definitely something that I internalized for a long time. That's how you connect, is kind of through this sarcasm, this lack of earnestness, this, for me, playfulness, but for other people, it might feel insulting.
Yeah, one of the things that I mention to people about the journey is it's called condition response. And condition response, there's a yin and yang again of that. We are conditioned as we are growing up, like you are. You're conditioned to respond a certain way, sarcasm. And so when things happen in life, you respond that way because you're conditioned. And when you are in the process of your journey and you're recognizing that condition response can harm someone, you are now put in a situation when you have to learn how to reprogram yourself to begin to respond a different way. And so you are called, if you will, to reprogram that part of you so that when that comes up, you will condition your respond to respond differently. And so that's what the journey is in life, that we are constantly locating things in our life that we have been conditioned to respond, and undoing that work and creating a new system, if you will. Neuroscience tells us we're reprogramming that cells to respond to a new way of thinking. And that's what we are constantly doing as individual as we're moving through. You're heading towards college, Gabe, and you're thinking about college and stuff like that. What field of study did you pick, and why did you pick it?
I'm trying to remember what was my first major. I think it was sports science. I
Hmm.
was a wrestler at the time, and I couldn't imagine anything else with my life. I actually only went to college because I wanted to wrestle in college.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long I lasted with that major, maybe a year. And then I went to psychology, and that didn't feel good for whatever reason. I don't remember. And then I went to communications, I think, because I
Hmm.
had it implanted in my head that that would be an easier thing.
Yeah.
And At that point, I didn't even know why I was in college. I had quit the wrestling team. I was
Yeah.
drinking for the first time. I was using cannabis for the first time. And really, I went to college for the wrong reasons. And then the reason I was there, I removed. And then it became, what was I there for besides to party, to drink? And, it's an expensive initiation just to be
Yeah.
drinking. I could drink anywhere probably, but I stayed there and I went through the motions for a few years just for that, just to be with friends. And I actually, oddly, I found maybe my first experience with the community when I went to college, and that was a big driver in me staying there. As toxic and you know I don't know what was the opposite of vulnerable that
Yeah.
community was. It was community and there was belonging in that space.
Let me ask you a question. Here you were, you said one of the main driving force was wrestling that got you there when you were there. When you got there based on that main driving force and you pivoted and you changed your mind and that wasn't the priority at the time, what changed to make that not the priority at the time? Because as you stated, this was the main driving force. And then all of a sudden you pivoted. What was it that caused that to happen?
Yeah, I did one tournament. I wrestled in one tournament.
Hmm.
I think I did really well. I won my first two matches. I lost my next two. Afterwards, the coach was very cruel to me. He had a lot of anger, a lot of rage. He expressed in a way that was really demeaning.
Yeah,
And I just felt a lot of rejection. I felt a lot of pain from that. This is a mentor of mine. This is someone who I look up to. And he's not only screaming at me, which I never found to be a productive motivator, but
yeah,
he's insulting where I came from, insulting my background, insulting my integrity. I wasn't perfect. I was 18 years old at my first college wrestling tournament, and there's a lot of pressure there. And, in that moment, I think I needed to be supported and loved.
yeah,
I was disappointed. If I had won that last match, I would have won a medal in my first tournament. And instead, I had someone demean and insult me. And then that night, I went out to meet with some of my friends who were older and got to drinking and kind of decided, why am I sacrificing the college experience, which to me was this partying, drinking, whatever else, to
yeah,
wrestle if it feels like this, where other sports, I think you can potentially have your match, your game, whatever, and then go out and be a normal college student for a night. But wrestling, the weight management piece meant
hmm,
that you kind of needed to stay locked in for 3 months, or at least that was my belief, is that it would be really bad if I were to party during the wrestling season. And so there was something else for me there. There was something else to
yeah,
motivate besides that. And so seeing that duality of going and having so much fun and then feeling feeling to be made ashamed of myself is what I felt. So yeah, it was a really big, hard decision. And there's still a little grief there, actually, that it was the biggest thing in my life for a long time.
yeah.
And I gave it up so suddenly and wondering how my life would be different if I had not.
Yeah, that's a powerful story, Gabe, because here's this young kid, but the genesis of that was in your family. Here's this kid that didn't get the support and all of the things that he needed within the family and the support and the love and the respect and all the different things. And here was a coach that this young gentleman, this young man was looking and thought it was there. And the coach from one situation showed that no, it's not there at all. And just broke this young man and caused him to just, throw up his hand, if you will, and just say what gives it, gives a shit, as they say. Just from that point on, just holding on to make it through college to graduate with your paper. Again, once you graduate and you got your paper, what was it what caused you to hang on, if you will, to make it through to the end of this time to graduate with that piece of paper?
I actually dropped out after my sophomore year.
Hmm.
as time went and I kept on changing majors, it felt less and less reason to apply myself in class. And I never was a super great student. But
Yeah.
when I didn't know, I couldn't see the future. I couldn't see what I would be happy doing. And there was a lot of messaging in my childhood, in my school, that we were supposed to find our passion. We're supposed to
Hmm.
find the thing that we love, and that's supposed to be our career. And I knew intellectually I might have the capacity to do a lot of things that, like, if I really wanted to apply myself, I believed I could go to med school, go to law school, have any of these coveted professions in our society. And I didn't care about any of them. I didn't know what that would be. And that was really paralyzing, this idea that I could choose
Yeah.
anything, but none of it feels right. And so I dropped out after 2 years. I started attending community college classes. I think I graduated with my 2 year when I was like 25 or 26. I was like
Hmm.
up and back and up and back, and um, a lot of a lot of back and forth of taking a single class, maybe taking a single class and then skipping the final for whatever
Yeah.
reason, or like having a technical issue in one final, I remember, and then never going and taking it again until like getting to a place where I said, I just need to feel like I finished something,
Yeah.
and I think I took four intense courses at the same time. Like they were designed to be one course at a time.
Yeah.
Accelerated, I think is the word. And working two jobs and just saying like, I'm going to finish this. And then the absolute disappointment of finding out that there was a clerical error and those four courses got me one credit short of graduating,
Hmm.
and having to go back another year later and find a very strange one credit course, which was introduction to the internet, where they would teach you how to write emails, how to use a web browser, and all sorts of other things that, like, in what this had to be 2014,
Yeah.
that almost no one my age needed to learn. And just as a total aside, there was one elderly gentleman who really wanted the class, and it was terrible for him as well, because he did not need 40 hours in a weekend of internet. He needed an hour every month at the local library or something like that. So he got deeply overwhelmed that no one was paying attention to that class.
And once all of this happening in your world, Gabe, all of this happened. How is Gabe doing?
I had a few years where, so I was working at a Thai restaurant, and I had found music. I started going to music festivals and concerts, and I had a good group of friends that we would go a few times a month. And there really is a unique, loving community aspect at certain
Hmm.
types of concerts, at raves, at jam bands.
Yeah.
And part of that is a lot of those concerts, people are using psychedelics and MDMA and not drinking as much. And so people are really open. And so for a good, I don't know, 3, 4 years, I had a core group of friends that felt really good, and we'd go to concerts, and I was living paycheck to paycheck, even though I was living with my parents. I was, making money and then spending all the money, making money and spending all the money. But still there was this simple joy of my life at that point, that it was just, there's a band I like in town, I'm going to go see that band. There's a rapper, I'm going to go see that rapper, go spend time
Yeah.
with my friends. And so things were pretty good at that point. I think where things started to shift a little bit is in 2014, I went to a coding boot camp to start a career as a software engineer.
Hmm.
And when I came back, some of my close friendships fell out. I was only gone for 6 months, and things had really changed in some of these relationships, that just being away that amount of time, it felt like, my best friend at the time wasn't interested in being in my life. Instead of, we used to talk on the phone every night, he'd be over my place several times a week, and I'd text him, I wouldn't hear back for 2 weeks. And I didn't
Yeah.
really know what was going on. I had a lot of resentment towards him, like a lot of hatred, that like why are you abandoning me? And there was
Yeah.
some strange behavior in there. And a few years later, I found out that that was really the start of his addiction starting to show. And he ended up passing away in 2016, 2017. And we were not in communication then. I completely cut him out of my life at that point. And really, like, he had set things in motion that he had, you know, I don't know if this is expression, like, quiet ghosted, that he would
Yeah.
respond, but he would respond after a month. Or like
Yeah.
I get him in person twice a year instead of what a relationship looked like. And so really I found out from his one of his childhood friends called me out of the blue and told me that he passed away. And I never really got an explanation. Like, I'm assuming since I heard addiction was involved that it was an overdose or a suicide, but I never really
Yeah.
had that full story there. But that actually created a lot of shame that, like, why didn't I know? Why wasn't I there
Yeah.
for him? And it's really, there's a lot of twisting and contorting I felt then, where, like, I know he didn't allow me to be in his life. And also, I think part of our experience, part of our human experience, is taking on things that don't belong to us. And I really felt like I should have done something different. I should have known somehow, even though he did everything he could to not let me know, to not let me
Yeah.
be a part of his life.
And as you said, things began to change right there as when you went to the coding class and you came back and you saw the difference within your friends and so forth. As you are moving in that direction as a coder, if you will, you notice a change within your friends. What changes did you begin to notice in you, Gabe?
I mean, more investment in my career and less investment in everywhere else, where I was making more and more money, but
Hmm.
my life became more and more constricted, where I also had started a hobby that was really important to me as a competitive weightlifter. And so it kind of became those two things more and more, that I gave up a lot of the concert lifestyle because I wanted to be able to train. I didn't want to, put things in my body that weren't good for me. I didn't want to be hungover on a Saturday or Sunday so I could train. And those were really noble goals. And I kind of
Hmm.
just cut out a big pillar of my life to do that. I did it very quickly. And so my life really was work, weightlifting, and then occasionally I would see friends, but like with a lot less frequency and a lot less intimacy with a lot of these friendships than I had for the years prior. And, I think at this point in my life, it's worth also mentioning, I had the one loss. Before that, I had another friend, John, who was murdered, and it was completely random act, completely sudden. He was in a very safe neighborhood that he was always in. And I took that loss very hard and really internalized that, and didn't even really realize how much it affected me. But in retrospect, I think it taught me that both that life is precious
Hmm.
and that you never know what's going to happen at any moment. Something traumatic, something painful, someone could be killed, lost, or whatever else, and brought up a lot of safety issues with me. And not just like, I'm unsafe around men. I don't feel safe on planes, that the universe, the world is
Yeah.
unsafe.
Yeah. As you're moving through life and you're growing as an individual, you're getting your weights, you're doing your thing, you're making your money. When did your personal development process or introduction became the real stuff?
Hmm.
You're dealing with mindset in weightlifting and when you were doing your wrestling and stuff like that, you're learning some of the principles of pushing beyond the body, beyond its normal space and stuff like that. But when you start doing the mindset training, you're getting more muscular, if you will, within that arena. When did you start that particular direction, or what was it's usually a culmination of things that lead to that. How did that thing look like, Gabe, as you began to being ushered into that direction?
So COVID, my job went remote. I moved across the country from the Philadelphia area to the Colorado area. And a few of my remaining close friendships, they fell out. That there was no explanation. Just people stopped responding to me. Maybe one friend didn't respond at all. Another friend, I'd have to text him 4 or 5 times, say, I'm flying home. No response. I'm flying home. No response. I'm worried about you. No response. And then I'd get a hold of him. In 2022, I think I just kind of realized that I was just tired all the time, that I didn't really want to do anything, that I had these things that I were commitments, and I'd make it through the week and make it to the weekend. And then I would just want to go back to work on Monday because there's nothing I want to do over the weekend. There's nothing that lit me up.
Yeah.
And then on Monday, I'd be like, I can't wait until it's Friday so I don't have to work anymore. And then be in a cycle for months and months and months where I'm just waiting for things to end.
Hmm.
And even I remember, I think the end of 2021, I took a trip to Hawaii by myself. I had some time off. Hawaii felt really simple because people spoke English. I wanted to go abroad, but I didn't feel like I had the energy to do a quick trip somewhere where
Yeah.
English was not primarily spoken. And I remember every day I would go, I do a hike, I do an activity, and then I would come back to my hotel as quickly as possible. And then I just watch TV. And I couldn't muster the energy to do anything past that one single thing every day. And then I left early that there was some like strike with the airlines. And I was like, okay, I just need to get out of here. And
Yeah.
instead of taking it as an opportunity that what if I miss my flight? I just have to be in Hawaii for longer. I was like, no, I just need to get back. I need to get back. And this happened over the course of a few months, but realizing that my framework for what depression was a lot different for what my depression looked like. I had been bypassing a lot of stuff that was going on that I was having suicidal thoughts daily. Like I didn't think I was suicidal, but the thought crossed my mind frequently. And I didn't connect. I didn't think that that was like strange or unusual or, I just like, it was just a part of my life. And Colorado, there was either decriminalized or in some places legalized psilocybin mushrooms. And I had been reading that microdosing was really powerful for depression. So I will start sleuthing on the internet, wondering, is there a way to just order them online? Like it's kind of legal here. So
Yeah.
like maybe I can get a hold of them. I don't know anyone.
Yeah.
And I did find them, but also a retreat center in Portugal started following me on Instagram. Like, I don't know if you want to say it's the universe, the creepiness of the algorithm, like what it
Yeah.
was, but retreat center serving a medicine called Iboga started following me.
Hmm.
And I had heard about Iboga, like these little nods over the course of a long time. And it just was not something that a recreational drug user would ever do. It's
Yeah.
very intense. It's very confronting. It's a multiple day experience. But I was always curious because it was just such a, like you heard such powerful stories about this. And, you also hear, most people's reference point for Iboga is the main alkaloid. The THC to cannabis of Iboga is called Ibogaine, and they use
Yeah.
it in heroin detox clinics. And it's really powerful and it
Yeah. Oh,
breaks
yeah.
people's dependence over the course of a couple
Hmm.
days. Just one challenging journey and you are free of your addiction for a lot of people. So flights to Portugal were crazy that summer. I don't know why. And so I found a place in Costa Rica. And right as I was getting ready to go, my friend was diagnosed with cancer and he was not taking care of himself. I thought, I can't spend any money. Like I might need to give my friend money to get him to afford his cancer treatment.
Yeah.
And I ended up a few months later flying down to Costa Rica, sitting with medicine for the first time ceremonially. And the medicine just told me over and over again, you need to love yourself. You need to love
Yeah.
yourself. And that medicine is known for being really, really direct. And so other medicines that might be mysterious, you're communicating with spirits. There's a language barrier. Iboga talks to you in what your common tongue is, whatever language you like. If you like computers, you might see a computer screen. If you're
Yeah.
audio, you might hear words. If you're visual, whatever else. And so it just told me, love yourself over and over again. And I didn't really know what that meant or how. It kind of became my life's mission to honor that thing, to figure out what it
Hmm.
meant to love myself. And there's a concept in psychedelic communities, in plant medicine communities, we call it integration, where you take what you learned and you apply it to your life and you make those changes stick. And I think the
Yeah.
integration for self-love is not like something I go home and do in a week. It's the rest of my life. I do the things that are
Yeah.
loving. I continue to create the feelings of love and to love myself. And that kind of just, it was really powerful. It shifted a whole lot. And it opened up just enough space for me to start to be curious about what my life could be and to bring me to the next thing and to meet the next person and the next person until I was at a space where I had enough space inside me that could hold it for other people and myself as well. That's the start of, the path of where I end up and how I am where I am right now.
Yeah, it's a powerful story. The key to all of this thing is you got to love yourself in order. That's the first aspect of it. Because as you love yourself, and I tell people, loving the self is the beginning because you are loving mankind. You're learning how to practice loving others as you're loving yourself. because you're a part of that the human race, and you're learning the process by which to love. So as you're loving yourself and you're learning those principles, when you are with others, you're going to love them the same way because you're familiar with what it looks like. And if you don't know how to love yourself, how can you love someone because you don't know what it looks like? And so the very first aspect of healing is loving the self. And as you began to do that, Gabe, and you started practicing those principles of loving the self and so forth, what did you begin to notice about you as you are now putting into practice those principles of loving and honoring yourself?
I noticed that what I wanted from life was a lot different. How I showed up in the world was a lot different. I noticed that I was a lot more sensitive, like a lot more vulnerable. Vulnerability is an interesting word. One of my mentors describes it as the capacity to allow yourself to be hurt. And there were a lot of
Mm-hmm.
spaces where I took on a lot of hurt. Like slowly, it was a process of de-armoring that the only way I could be safe in the world for most of my life was to protect myself and protect everyone else from my emotions. And I had not really authentically felt most of the spectrum of emotion for most of my adult life. You know, maybe before I don't remember really being able to cry most of my life. And
Yeah.
so getting back to a place where I could cry, where I can experience, where I could feel grief for the first time, you know, like a really big process I had was really truly grieving that death for the first time. That took me a year and a half maybe to get to
Mm-hmm.
that place where I had the capacity to do that. I also noticed that I was kind of like edging into connection, like finding connection and like, oh, this one doesn't feel good, like thinking this is a good connection and really it being codependent or whatever else. And then, you know, finding another one slowly over time, getting to a place where I could develop more authentic connections, where I could develop connections that felt good for me, even knowing what feels good for me. And you know, something you said about self-love, that you know, as you develop this capacity to love yourself, you can allow in more relationships. And if you are
Mm-hmm.
in a place of hatred, resentment, if you don't know how to love yourself and someone says I love you, it almost feels like an attack. It's
Yeah.
like you are lying. Like how could you? Like it almost feels like they're being sarcastic or cruel. And it sent me into a process for when some people said they loved me for a while. And so it was this holistic restructuring of my entire life that happened. And I think it was 9 months into my journey that I quit weightlifting, which is something the medicine told me, but I
Mm-hmm.
just could not imagine that. And there was this realization that the weightlifting was slowly killing me,
Yeah.
that I had one injury after another, back injuries, foot injuries. I had an injury where I couldn't walk for a couple of weeks. My sciatic pain was so bad.
Well.
So like realizing why it's not good for me and then getting to a place where I did my first meet in a long time and my mental health spiraled. I fixated on my performance and I couldn't get past it. And I had spent probably $10,000 in that last year on mental, emotional, spiritual, all this work, all this time. And then to see myself regress so deeply in one weekend and for so
Mm-hmm.
long, I was like, I can't do it. Like I need to choose between this passion I had and everything else in my life.
And as you choose which one you wanted, and you've decided as you wanted to be a coach. How did that transition happen? And when you moved through that, how did that happen, Gabe? And what was that experience like having that first individual as your client, if you will? How
Um,
did that process take place?
yeah. So there was a distinct point where I had enough space to hold for other people, where I went to an event that one of my mentors, her mentor, invited people to. And so I
Mm-hmm.
went and a lot of things opened up in me. A lot of emotion came out for the first time. And then there just happened to be a local one the next week. And I noticed all of a sudden I was with someone and they said something. And I was like, that's kind of weird. And I asked a question about it. They said something else. I'm like, oh, that's a weird. That like, I don't know why would you feel that? And like, ask another question, ask another question. And for an
Mm-hmm.
hour, she said stuff and I'd ask questions. I noticed it kind of like kind of spiral deeper and deeper into her process, into
Yeah.
herself. And I found it to be so joyful, so fulfilling, like so much fun.
Yeah.
It's like we're detectives together and we're solving a
Hmm.
mystery. That's all it
Yeah.
felt. And at that time it was like I'd be really wide-eyed and like so excited to be like doing this with
Yeah.
someone. And the same weekend I also met a woman, and I came downstairs and there was a woman sitting in a dark corner by themselves. I was curious who it was. I went over there and they were afraid of people seeing them, of people knowing them. And so over the course of a couple hours, with help from a few other people, I got this woman to come upstairs. I promised her, I was like, people really want to meet you. People are really like excited to meet new people in this community. They really want to meet you. If you just show yourself, if you just allow
Hmm.
them, I think that they're gonna love on you. They're gonna care about you. And so getting her to go upstairs and then having people just organically show up and ask her questions and and love up on her and cuddle her and all those things, and like seeing the shift in this person. These two things were like the first time that I ever really held space in any productive way for anyone else. And then over the course of the next 6, 9 months, I kind of developed this skill organically and started to notice that I would be at events for myself. I'd be a participant. And for whatever reason, someone who needed something would just show up next to me. I remember I was talking to this gentleman and we were having this long conversation, and there's a woman just a few feet away, and finally we break. I look over and she said, I can't get out of my head. I'm always thinking like going on this rant. And when I talked to her later, she said when we met for like 2 seconds the day before, she felt safe with me. And I don't know why. I don't know what I
Yeah.
did, what about me, but like for whatever reason, she felt like she needed to be in that space with me. And that just kept happening over and over and over again. And more, I'd go to these things and take masks off and be vulnerable and show emotion and feel really fulfilled in how I served myself and served my community, served the people I met. And then I'd go into work and I'd have to put on a mask for my boss and say, oh, yeah, you're right. Like, that's a great idea, and have all these safety issues there. And so my personal life was becoming more and more aligned, more in integrity, more authentic. And then there
Hmm.
was a big part of my life, like a third of my life, I had to be really deeply inauthentic and protect
Yeah.
myself. And so more and more that felt like I can't sustain this. This is not good for me. And I went to a coach training program
Hmm.
last year, and these people are amazing. And I signed up for their apprenticeship, with last a full year. And then I went to a second event that was hosted for just my community, a private one
Yeah.
instead of a public one. And I went in, I told someone that I'd known for maybe 6 months, it's like, hey, I'm going to be a full-time coach now. And they said, oh, I want to work with you. And I was just so flattered. I was like, that was not my goal. Like,
Yeah.
we're actually here for the same event. You're here to learn the same things as me. And so that was my first client. And I've had a lot of other people bring interest. And right now, where I'm at my process is that I go to events and I see the impact I have. And it's not perfect. I don't show up perfectly for every person every time. And I'm actually not for every person every time.
Yeah.
My medicine is not necessarily for everyone. But as I develop my skills, I can hold more people and more processes and more things. So I show up to these events and I see the impact I have. And I am learning to run a business and to market myself and to post on social media. The social media thing is a really big edge for me. And just
Yeah.
putting my face out there and speaking to a camera was really, really scary. And I've been intentionally putting myself in these challenging situations where actually wrote a poem, and I read a poem in front of a group last weekend. And that was a
Yeah.
really wild, scary thing for me that, I didn't think I'd ever be writing poems, but they just started coming through me. And it's an opportunity for me to practice being vulnerable and using my voice, which I never felt safe enough to do growing up. And it still is. I'm terrified. Like, I sat there and I
Yeah.
opened my mouth 5 times, no words came out. And I had to really get myself to emote, to project. And so that's where I'm at, is I'm building a business, and I'm so confident that there are people that I can help, people that need exactly what I have. And it's just a matter of figuring out how to let them find me right now.
And for those of you that are listening to us, we're going to provide all of Gabe's information so you guys can find him. And, you need to find him. Like I said, as you've gone through some stuff. He's gone through depression. All of you that are going through depression and suicidal thoughts and stuff like that. Here's a gentleman that has gone through some of those things, and he has some insight as to how to exit, if you will. And he will be able to help you guys do that. So we'll work on that. Let me ask you this question as we're closing, Gabe. You have a mic, a couple of billion people on the planet, and this mic is connected to all of them. What would you say?
Be gentle on yourself, find your passions. Life does not need to be the way that you were taught it to be. In our society, we have a framework that's very specific of how we're supposed to live, and that way does not necessarily serve us. And there are other ways to live. You just need to look for them. And a lot of it is in your internal wisdom already. You just need to create the space for it to come out. And we all have it. We all have an inner knowing. But one of my mentors says, we were systematically taught not to trust ourselves. And this whole process is learning how to trust ourselves again.
Again, I want to thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. Man, this has been a good one. Thank you for your time, number one, and thank you for sharing you and your journey here at Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you, Ken. Thanks for creating the space. I deeply appreciate it and appreciate all that you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.